that, I want to welcome everybody to this afternoon's chat. It's less of a webinar, more of a conversation, really, because what we all have in common on this call is nerds for data, right? I said this morning on a LinkedIn post, data nerds of a feather flock together, and that's really appropriate since it's Gradient who has a flamingo for
absolutely
their for their logo, and
it's going to be a flocking good time here.
All
about the data.
It'll be brilliant as Lifecycle Insights is a light bulb. So really, we're just going to do 15 minutes of bad puns about birds and light bulbs, and then we'll jump into the meat of it. But actually quite excited to have, first, I'm Marnie Stockman from Lifecycle Insights, but we're really here to see Colin Knox, CEO of Gradient, and Alex Farling, Chief Customer Experience Officer for Lifecycle Insights. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see their faces larger instead of the screen with their picture of their faces larger. And I will pass it over to you, Colin, to give an intro of you and Gradient, fairly newish to the space.
We are, yeah, as a company, but as a group, definitely not. So we came out of running our own MSP previously, and then much like many others before us, we dove into the channel software side of things. So founded and operated and built Passportal up until its acquisition by SolarWinds, now known as Enable. And post that adventure, we've kind of jumped back in now with Gradient MSP. So all focused around helping MSPs clean up and find better, more innovative and effective ways to leverage the data that they already have at their fingertips. So that started with a data cleaning module of our platform that we're building towards. So kind of connect into PSAs and clean up data. And we recently announced that in November, we're taking a slightly adjacent path in hopping on and solving the billing reconciliation nightmare. We won't call it a pain or a trouble, nightmare that all MSPs deal with on a monthly basis, and leveraging that towards a path of greater insights for the industry. So, yeah.
That feels like a great transition. You end with insights. I can introduce.
There you go.
Lifecycle Insights. Well done. It's like we really orchestrated this.
Like we planned that or something. Little do they all know we're flying by the seat of our pants.
I am reading off of a teleprompter, just whatever Marnie types for me to say.
So you can't even tell.
You're good at it. So Alex Farling, Chief Customer Experience Officer over here at Lifecycle Insights. And for those of you that don't know me, I spent 16 and a half years running an MSP. I was the quintessential automated if you can, throw it out if you can't type MSP owner. Like we spent a ton of time scripting and automating things. And one of my biggest frustrations was how long it took me to get data out of the platforms that we had. So we built Lifecycle Insights to help us get data out of these platforms. And as we worked with our partners, the more and more data we got, the more we realized everyone's data stinks. And so we kind of started early on, and I don't exactly remember when it was, Marnie. I think it was still 2019 when we, right out the gate, when we realized that everyone's data was bad and we needed some insight into it. So we built a data quality module, and it was one of the first things that we bolted onto the platform. And it really gave us a lot of insight into how bad the PSAs and document management solutions were at forcing people to fill in critical fields and fields that mattered on the customer experience side that may not have mattered in the engineering and day-to-day support side. So we kind of thought we were the only ones carrying the mantle for data quality for quite a while. And then we came across these guys building this Gradient thing. And that's kind of what led us to chatting here today, because we've really been a very quiet, or a very muted voice in the channel, standing in our corner talking about data quality all by ourselves. It's awesome to have a partner to stand out here and
nobody puts Lifecycle Insights in the corner.
Well, it's been done before. Yeah. So
Alex is tired of talking to a mirror, so we're glad to have you.
It is. Because, to this point, we've spent a lot of time just helping MSPs kind of manually clean up their data, because it didn't get bad by accident. It didn't get bad it didn't get bad on purpose, but there's no real good solution to clean it up in an automated fashion. So we have entire sessions that we teach and walk MSPs through and have documentation on just how to clean up the data that your PSA brings to the quarterly business review.
So with that, thank you. I'm going to hop off and let the two of you continue the conversation. But for everybody on the call, just a little framework. We're kind of going to walk through different pieces of the life cycle of a customer and life cycle of an MSP and the data at each stage along the way. So if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat and I will chime back in to interrupt the conversation for these folks. And I will let you, Colin, take it away from here.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. We've had some initial conversations, Alex, around data and the impacts that can have both, positively and negatively on an MSP business and that of their customers. And it's kind of interesting to watch now as we've seen so many different things trickle down from enterprise or big business into the small business and even the MSP realm. And one thing that we're trying to keep pushing towards now is this whole becoming data driven, right? Yeah. And cutting out the whole trust your gut mentality that this industry has traditionally been based upon. And so I think some of the good stuff today that we can drive towards is what are some metrics or what are some ways that MSPs can be using data to inform those better customer outcomes, and what can we do on the business side inside an MSP to help inform better decisions for them? And I know you've got tons of insights and little nuggets of what they can be looking at to drive greater success for customers and stuff like that. So what are some of the things that you would want to key in on?
Well, Marnie and I were talking about this just a few minutes ago, and we kind of had the concept of, where we use data all the way through the process. And at the beginning, when we're onboarding a customer, we don't really have that much data. And we spend a lot of time out there collecting it. So we go out and pre-sale a customer, whatever our sales pitch is just the data that we could see when we walk through the door, or that we could scan for with like a network detective or a cyber CNS or one of those kind of tools, or that we can get from a conversation speaking to a customer. So there's really only three ways we can kind of collect data in the beginning. We lose a lot of the automation and a lot of the stuff that we get once we deploy all our cool tools. Mm-hmm. But as we work through the process, when we onboard a customer, we drop those agents in, all of a sudden we get a ton of data. And at Lifecycle, we've kind of learned that the data that the agents return is largely some of the best data we get anywhere across the MSP. And I don't know if you've seen the same thing. And then we insert humans to improve that data, and we screw it up. And some of it's bad processes, in a hurry, in a rush, whatever. And some of it's just we don't understand the impact of what tweaking this little lever over here does by the time something spits out of our billing system or out of a report, or it goes through the sausage making machine that is a PSA. And by the time the data comes out the other end, I don't think a lot of MSPs even realize how it impacts them.
Well, when you think about things, there's been so many initiatives, we'll say, driven by major vendors and tech companies in our space about these are the metrics that matter. Here's the things to watch, right? Here's all of these things to be a successful MSP. And you're right, things are getting fed into the PSA from everywhere now, right? We've got our RMM and our other cloud monitoring services that are spouting information into our PSA, and then our documentation systems are pulling that out and feeding some in, and everything and everywhere. And I think it's interesting because when you guys have a solution like Lifecycle Insights and you've got this kind of QBR mentality, and if I had money, got paid for every time that an MSP on the road told me I can't get customers to show up to our QBRs.
Yeah, I love that.
What do I need to do, right? I'd be rich and I wouldn't be on this webinar. But I think a lot of it comes down to always looking to drive value in what you offer to your clients, right? And that's been the premise of so many conversations, right? So leveraging your data. So today, every MSP is feeding all this information into their various systems and PSAs from RMM and stuff, right? So you can talk to customers all day long about what SLA you managed, what your ticket completion rates were, what their, uptime was, all of these different metrics in there. But what we're getting away from and what we haven't done traditionally is translate what those metrics mean to the business, and better yet, what you can do to influence those metrics for better success for those, clients, and then trend that over time. That's how you deliver a winning value proposition.
So,
there,
so
right?
tie this together for me though. How does PSA data relate to metrics that we use to manage our MSPs? Because that's the part that I think is a disconnect for a lot of folks.
Yeah. So
And I cheated because you and I already had this conversation. But you know, to tie, that's the thing I struggled to understand at the beginning.
So I think there's a few things. One, right? Like, so when we're selling out to clients, we talk about managing and maintaining an SLA, right? And so we tell the client, hey, we've maintained X uptime. We've maintained, we had like a 35-minute on average time to respond. We had an X number of time as an average time to resolve and stuff like that. And so we use that as an indicator to our clients if we're being successful for them as an MSP, right? We're maintaining the level of service that we agreed to within our contract. And hey, that's great. Where we can look at that as a business, as an MSP, is, okay, it's great that I'm maintaining my SLA, but at what point are we starting to see a decline on that, right? So we're watching our average time to resolve actually go up, right? It's taking us more minutes as an average time to resolve. Now, we might still be within that SLA, but that can be an informant to us, or an indicator on when we need to hire another technician or another method of adding capacity to our team, so that they have enough time to get up and running and ready to go, so that we don't hit that threshold on our SLA and all of a sudden have clients going, hey, great, you just missed that SLA. Now, there's nothing written in our agreement as to what that means for me as a client, but how are you going to recompensate me on that, or whatever, right? So avoiding that conversation as a whole, knowing when you need to add capacity, and then even understanding how many headcount or how many endpoints per technician are we able to manage. So now, how much capacity does that earn me to be able to grow up and add more clients into the fold, and how big can those clients be? So that's one indicator of something we talk to clients about that we can use to drive more success in our own business.
Yeah, and I always like to steal from one of our partners who calls this the service level argument, right? Anytime you get to the point where you've missed your SLA and then you have to have the conversation about it, you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
But it can also be an indicator of some other things, whether it's a need to hire, or that you're getting different and repetitive tickets, or there's a training issue there where something's happening that your team can't adequately solve for, or can't solve for in a timely fashion. That's driving ticket counts up too. So there's a lot of data that can go into.
Well, and identifying anywhere that there's waste in your organization, right?
Right.
Whether that's time spent searching for stuff, and you go with, you've got a documentation platform that's going to automatically solve that time waste, right? Where are you wasting times? Where can you offload things to your clients that saves you money as a business and gives them a better experience as a customer at the end of the day, right? So there's a lot of things that you can look into in your data that, like you said, average ticket counts. What are the most popular ticket types? Like, for all that is holy, please stop doing these ambiguous ticket types that can't derive any insights or reporting relevance to you, right? Stop listing things at just line of business application or application issue. Drill that further down. What applications are they having the most issues with? Is there a newer version that they can upgrade to? Should they maybe move from an on-prem deployment of that business application to a cloud one where they can be at the newest, truer version all the time? Is there training that you can engage their vendor to deliver to them, so that you aren't wasting your precious time that's burdened in a contract at no additional value to you? Where can you offload that? So there's all those things that if you set the right foundation for the data to feed you answers, it'll all be there for you to understand.
So what I hear you saying is, if somehow we can get our PSA to tell us, hey, this guy's trying to check Gmail with Outlook, and that's an application issue, that we can actually identify that customer's going to have a stupid high amount of tickets because they're doing something that they insist ought to be able to be done, but really shouldn't be done. And, if we can identify that somehow, we should be able to make our tools point that out for us instead of having to do it all by hand.
Well, absolutely, right? It's I'll equate it to, your data is not going to tell you what you need to know if you don't ask it or make it able to, right?
Yeah.
So hands up if you've ever worked at a company or you've managed a company and the second that somebody got let go, whether it was a client that you terminated or got terminated, or it was a fellow employee of the company, if you heard the words, oh, it's about time you got rid of them, yet no one ever told you that they hated dealing with that client, or that that person was a useless, endeavor inside the organization and didn't provide anything. If you don't have and foster open communication on your team and within your business to share those types of things in a, non-conflictive way and in a constructive manner, you're never going to get that feedback. It's the same thing with your data. If you're steering your data to only paint one picture for you, which might be how much revenue you've got or how many endpoints you're managing, you're going to miss out on so much more intrinsic detail that could actually take you up to that next level and move you forward.
So I think a big piece of what we see is that MSPs don't know what data is valuable and how to use it. The perfect example, I always go back to the firewall, right? So we look at a lot of data around assets where you're looking deeper into the PSA at some of the things. Yeah. But, when we're trying to build a customer a budget, we need to know everything we can know about their assets. When was it purchased? How old is it? When does it go end of life by the vendor? Is it going to be life cycled out due to something else? And we need to know all this information when we go to pull the assets. Like I said earlier, everything has an agent installed on it. It has really good data. All these fancy RMM systems are smart about, knowing the serial number, knowing the make and model, and giving us enough information to go out to a vendor's website and just look it up, right? API, hey Dell, when was this purchased? Okay, now we know when to throw it away. But when a user enters the data, they carry a firewall out to a client to install it. They slam it in the rack. They go into IT Glue or SolarWinds or whatever to enter that data. And now I've got a user doing what a computer would have done a better job of. They get presented with 45 fields that they need to fill in, and they don't know which ones matter. So an engineer wants to know the IP address and the password and maybe the site that it's at, doesn't care so much about the purchase date and the warranty expiration, right?
Yeah.
My account manager is now saddled with incomplete data. How do you, but the engineer's not really doing anything malicious or wrong. He doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
Because the organization doesn't know how to manage this data. So how do you take the pieces, not only the pieces of data that they don't know they should be looking at, but more importantly, that they don't know they should be entering? How do they mature to get to that point?
It's things that the technicians don't even want to do anyways.
Right. Yeah. So documentation is not fun.
Finding ways to automate that stuff, right? There are automated ways to capture it, whether it's with a solution like you guys, and I think you guys actually just launched some sort of integration with LionGuard that can go out and capture and collect this information automatically. Why have a human do work that a computer could probably do at a fraction of the cost and more effectively? Leverage your humans to do what the computers can't, right? Yep. They can't manage that client. They can't communicate effectively with the client and understand what it is that the client is needing from them. They can't walk all the way over there and make sure that lights are flashing or things aren't smoking or whatever else, right? So leverage your humans for what humans can do best, and leverage automation and the computers for what they do best. But I challenge on some of the stuff. So you said the warranty thing, and that's great, right? That's absolutely, that's still be end of life or whatever, and we need to have an evergreen process, be ahead of the curve on that. But how many of the MSPs out there, and I remember when we used to do these massive reports that we used to send out every month to our clients, like we're talking 100 pages plus. And then this light bulb went off for everybody, and they're like, executive summaries. That's what we need to start providing out, right?
Right.
But in those massive reports, we gave them like an asset detail on every single workstation and server they had. And in there was trending lines of CPU performance, RAM performance and utilization, disk space utilization. And in theory, we always said, so we trend this to make sure that you never run out of disk space or whatever else. Well, when you think about a value proposition of your clients to deliver a better outcome for them and more opportunity for you, how many MSPs are out there looking at, wow, these employees have pinned their CPU or hit beyond a threshold X number of times, or RAM and or both, over the last month or over the last 3 months. They really need a bigger, stronger resource for them to be doing. They need more compute power, because that's holding them back from producing for the company. And they might not complain, like my wife here, who I get to hear every day how much she hates her computer that she uses for work, right? But she doesn't complain to work about it. Well, that's something that IT should already clue into to see that's getting pinned. We need to make sure, like, you're paying a lot more for that employee, Mr. Client or Miss Client, than you are for that computer. Let's swap that computer out, give that to a lower intense, compute power requirement employee, and get that person producing at a way higher level for you, right? That's not necessarily an EOL type computer or an asset. It's not out of warranty. And let's face it, disk space isn't really a concern anymore because most stuff's in the cloud or synchronized off anyways. But those are little data bits that we can use to inform a powerful, valuable conversation that mitigates issue for us, improves the customer experience. That employee that didn't even complain or ask for anything just got a new computer because you were watching out for them. Like, look at how that drives the relationship, plus, revenue and opportunity for you. So those are some of the things that you can look at data-wise that can be informing what's going on for your clients and where you need to drive that next level of, we're not just going to support your IT, we're going to make your business better.
And that's a promise that MSPs have been given for years, right? We'll be that's the proactive support thing that we've been promising. But I see where, a ton of those data points just get lost inside of these systems that are super noisy and don't do a good job of letting the important things bubble to the top.
Well, and that's bingo on it. The important things bubbling to the top. They don't. They sit at the bottom until you get down to them. Right. And
then they're 6 months old.
Some of the stuff, and I think it was teased out by Marnie earlier or whatever before, but you start looking at metrics in your business and again, for your clients and everything else, MSPs look at all the time profitability per contract, or a bunch of them do, right? Mm-hmm. What's my profitability per contract with my clients? And I know that's what we watched. And it wasn't until we tuned into profit per product line that we exploded our business growth. Because chances are across all your contracts, you have very similar products. I know a lot of MSPs out there go, here's our bundle, that's our stack, that's what we put out to our clients, right?
Yep.
What if it's one or two things on that list of 10 to 15 that are driving all of your profit, and the other ones are actually encumbering it? They're negating the profit that you're making. And that's not just on a straight cost per, resale price type approach. That's on how much time's getting spent supporting, administering, deploying, training on those other solutions that you're putting. They're the soft cost to your business, right?
And we had to work to bubble that to the top at my MSP, right? We'd go to have a quarterly business review, and we'd go into ConnectWise, and we'd look at that little recap tab and see how the customer was doing and see how much time we had spent. But it was all, it was in my gut, right? I had to know the customer well enough. I had to know their products well enough. We had that one backup product that we had to touch way too often that just didn't get the job done. And we would swap. When we finally identified this customer's getting way too many hours from our backup specialist, we're gonna switch out their backup product. All of a sudden, the margins on that contract would go from 40% to 65 or 70%. And all of a sudden, you've got a much more profitable agreement. You actually have a happier customer because you're in their way less. You're bothering them less to get things fixed. Their backup reports are coming through at night. Green, life is good, as opposed to, with alerts and problems all the time.
Why would you not double, triple, quadruple down on the things that are making you the most money and completely forget about and omit the things that are making you no or the least amount of money, right? You always you hear in the industry about how commoditized managed services is. You talk about you have to be the trusted advisor. No, those who specialize make the most money. I don't care what industry you're in, right? I remember when we were in MSP and we didn't do any sort of database, like nothing database wise. It was like the Oracle specialist that was charging out at like $500+ an hour. An hour, one single person. And we brought them in for everything across our clients that had Oracle systems, and just boom. I wasn't charging $500 an hour to do everything IT for them.
Right.
Like that wasn't happening. So where you can specialize, you can do so much better, right? When we started to look through things on that profit per product line, we realized we're not making any money on endpoint protection products. Like antivirus, EDR was not a thing back then, right? No money on that. So why are we bothering with that? That's just a standard that must be there, whatever else. What we were making money on was business continuity. And we had no idea about that till we started to look at the fact that this was like deploy straight cost for cost against price. And the fact that it just sat there and ran, right? For what this, we won't name solutions, but the ones that we built a $500,000 profit book of business just off business continuity after that, right? Forget going in saying that we're going to manage all the endpoint security. We're going to come in, we're going to do all this. No, we led with business continuity. That's where we went. We walked in, we sold that solution, we dropped it in, and then we sprawled out on other profitable product lines from there. And that made every contract so much more profitable, and we knew what we could expect from any client. The next thing was understanding adoption per product line. So everybody started out a la carte and this and that. And as you added in something new, maybe dark web monitoring, it's like, okay, now we're going to go and try and take that across our existing
Only
contracts.
3 companies buy it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, understand what services are your clients not just telling you that they want, but they're buying from you.
Yeah.
And which ones are they not? Why would I waste more fruitless efforts on the ones that clients just aren't taking and take the ones that are and be like, oh, wow, if all of these clients just jumped on that, wouldn't that be an awesome, foot in the door for me in other businesses? Now I know that that's something of keen interest from whether it's this vertical of business or clients as a whole, any type of business. I can lead with that now. That resonates with people. So instead of going in saying, hey, is your IT department or IT company knocking it out of the park for you? It changes that conversation to, hey, is business continuity important to you? Or is your data on the dark web important to you, or whatever else, right? It's framing that conversation, but it's using the data to inform you on what the world, like what the reality is and what conversations to have.
We did that exercise with an MSP actually, and they realized that there were a couple of products that they were just bad at selling. They realized that they had customers who they're really, really low adoption. I mean, low double-digit adoption. I think it was like 15 or 18% adoption across a couple of product lines. And what they realized was they needed to go meet with that vendor and learn how to sell that product, because while they had it and they could offer it, it wasn't being adopted simply because they weren't comfortable selling it. And sometimes sales get separated far enough from the leadership of the MSP or from the the actual engineers who are supporting the products. And the engineers might be spot on with the product, but if you don't know the business case to sell it, it's never going to get adopted unless you're one of those MSPs that just says it's all in my stack, it's included. At which point, yeah, it'll get adopted, but it's at a straight cost to you. There's no additional margin for it. So
I think PSAs have done a ton of great things for MSPs and IT services over there. Like, amazing how even expansive those solutions have become to drive more and more value for you. But I think if there's one disservice that's happened, and that's not naming anybody in particular, it's focusing MSPs on 2 market niche specific metrics to run and guide their businesses by, right? And that's that, again, back to that SLA and profitability per contract and stuff like that. Whereas if you tune and focus into what the rest of the business world looks at, are the metrics that they have that indicate business success for them, right? Why are we not, as an industry, advised MSPs to go the same way? We never tuned into it as our MSP. And even when we were running Passportal, we thought we were pretty good because we were looking at things like ASP, the average selling price, or ACV, the average contract value, and LTV, lifetime value, and stuff like that. Now, I don't think there's a single MSP that knows what their cost to acquire a customer is, or maybe there are. Some of the larger ones know what their cost to acquire a customer is. And the converse ratio of that is what their lifetime value is. So what should you be willing to invest to acquire a customer? Knowing what your gross margin payback period is, and we know how much money you're going to make off of them in the future, right?
We know nobody knows that, because you see the conversation all the time in a Reddit thread where somebody says, what do I do with a customer who has a Sonic wall that they just paid for a year's worth of subscription on and doesn't want to throw it away to get my brand new firewall?
Yeah,
you're talking about a $1,000 box, $2,500 box, whatever, to go capture a customer whose lifetime value might be $100,000. Well, who wouldn't burn $2,500 on the front lawn to go cash a check for $100,000?
I think if there's any sales or marketing people on this call today who are struggling to get budget and interest from their leadership or whatever else to put money into more sales and marketing efforts, show and demonstrate across your existing customers what it's cost to acquire your customers to date, how that maybe has trended, and what your average lifetime value is. By how long are you retaining customers? What's your average monthly or average annual residual over them? And make that ratio. I've just given a perfect business case now to you as the owner or leader or whatever else of how I can make money with X dollars in investment in marketing and sales efforts. That should correlate into this much more customer and customer value and revenue and future opportunity for the business, right? We were doing, again, all this stuff at Passportal, from the ACV and the LTV and cost to acquire and everything else, until we sold the business to SolarWinds or Enable now, who they're a very, very astute acquirer and very astute business, right? They have very smart business people, right? And the second that they said to us, well, what's your retention per product? What's your ACV per product and adoption per product? Holy crap. So we had 4 products at that business. We had no idea, because all we knew and all we were tracking was, what is each customer worth to us on average? And, what's our retention of the customer? Again, back to an MSP, you've got all these product lines you're offering, some bundled, some a la carte, whatever else. What's your retention per product line? Are you going out and having your salespeople beat the pavement selling solutions that are averaging a 1-year retention rate and your customers are dropping off of it? Are you putting entire customers at risk because you're continuing to put out a solution that is going to not drive value for them? And they find like, oh, I guess since I can't cancel that one component, I guess I have to cancel everything.
We actually, that actually reminds me of when I had my MSP. We sold a VoIP product that way underperformed, and at the end of the day, it cost us a customer who was, they weren't huge. They were $2,000 a month in managed services. We lost $2,000 a month in managed services over commissions on a what was it, a $500 a month voice product. And when you look at what it actually costs to go out and sign a new managed services deal, at my MSP, it was somewhere around $10,000. That was our cost to acquire a customer. That one voice product that we got nothing off of, essentially nothing off of, wasn't worth it.
No.
Right.
Well, and that's what we realized too. As soon as we dug into those numbers, we were piling R&D resources, support resources, sales resources, marketing resources in after a product that people weren't buying, or the ones that were buying, they were dropping it off because they maybe saw an initial value, but then it just wasn't as valuable as they expected it to be. So the second we cut that off and focused down on other things, there went another growth curve, right? So there's all of these areas where you can tune into things and look at things and read the data to better inform your business, to make better decisions, to drive better outcomes for you and your clients that way.
Yeah, no, 110%. And I think, one of the big things that we focused on at Lifecycle is trying to bring some of that transparency to your customer. How do these data pieces that you guys are looking at inside the PSA, because they're way more in depth than the high level data quality that we're looking at, how do you translate those to data that can be carried to the customer? And it's funny because one of the gentlemen that's commented in here is his business partner made a comment that I've quoted 100 times, which was, we are literally the stewards of our clients' data. And I believe that. I've believed it forever. I've never heard it said so clearly and in such words that the dumb sales guy over here could understand it. But, when he said it, I went, I knew that, I felt that, I understand that. And, we really want to deliver that back to our partners, to our customers. It's their data. So how does this translate to the conversations that we can and should be having with our customers, other than the sales opportunity?
I like that steward.
I love it.
Analogy, right? So and it's true. So if you think to, where we started and why we started with looking at the dirty data. So there's a wealth of MSPs that are data driven and they're making decisions on it, and they've all subscribed to whatever dashboarding or business intelligence system of choice that they want to use because they want to work with the data. We wanted to save those people from making a ton of bad decisions off of that because there's so much bad data in their systems, right? Yeah. So if you take that steward analogy and move it over to, like, who are other stewards? You got flight attendants, right? They would not want to be attending to a flight with some belligerent person on that flight that's going to make for an uncomfortable experience for the rest of their guests on that flight going somewhere. So they're going to take actions to remove that person. In business with data, we're essentially allowing to continue stewarding bad data on behalf of our clients and on behalf of our own business nonstop. And that's making for an uncomfortable experience for everything else along the way. When we start digging in and looking at things, like it's so simple to do, and everybody could do this manually if they wanted. It would just be a nightmare of an overwhelming process to go through. You know, when you look at things, how many MSPs are going through and cleaning up the contacts within their PSA when they no longer work at the business or at a client?
I can
right?
tell you that percentage, and it's right about 0.
Yeah, you know
Right?
how I know that?
We look at that data. Yeah.
We're seeing like 1,000+ contacts that are dirty or irrelevant per MSP that's plugging into our system.
I believe that.
And these are MSPs. Some of them only have 250 or 500 endpoints, right? Some of them have tons.
Yeah.
They have more inactive contacts that are, you know, poisoning their reporting and systems than they actually do have active contacts for their
I'll give
clients
you
that
one
they're
that upsets
supporting.
me even more. We see a contact that exists in 365 that doesn't exist in the PSA on the regular. And
Yeah.
that one bothers me even worse, because it means that if that person calls the help desk, they'll probably get help without the MSP even verifying who they are.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
you think about that. How can you ever make a decision on anything, right? How do you truly know how many users you're supporting? How can you make plans around that? Investment choices around that, projections around that, if you don't actually know. Bill about it. We had an MSP that was in our early access program, and they went and we'll go on the contacts thing. So it went and illuminated all these contacts that we were very confident no longer work for their clients anymore and shouldn't be in there because it's obfuscating all of their reporting. The number one highest confidence contact that we said, this is definitely dirty, you should be getting rid of this. The guy looked at it and went, holy crap. No wonder they're the worst paying client all of the sudden. We're chasing them for payment all the time because at the end of the month, they click bill this client and that hopped off to QuickBooks, and QuickBooks automatically sends this email off to that person who hasn't worked there in like 2 years. Holy smokes. Like, that's not a small contract. How many of those are riddled throughout MSPs where they just trust the automation, right? That's going to go off to the right contact and they're going to get it and they're going to process the PO and it's going to go and we're going to get paid and everything's awesome.
We found an MSP that had a similar issue where they had been offboarding customers or offboarding users and not retiring their 365 licenses.
Yeah.
And we identified $750 a month worth of Office 365 spend that had not been retired, that these people got to either cancel for themselves and make more money or take off their clients' bills and not overbill their clients.
Well, you have the inverse of that. So the next problem that we're looking out to solve at Gradient, so in initial conversations and looking through things, everybody hates reconciling it and what they're selling on their resale stack. They hate doing it, right?
Yeah,
and we refer to it as that time of the month, right? It's horrible. You never want to do that. And you postpone it. You don't want to deal with it. And then you go and you finally do some of it. And then you're like, this really sucks. Forget it. I'm not going to finish. You know how many licenses you're getting charged for that you're not charging your clients back for that are actually in use?
Lots.
Again, right? That's out there. And that's bad data that sits there because of it's not even human error. Like, it becomes laziness. Some of it's error. Some of it's just not having access, things not talking to each other. And you look at the amount of revenue that's costing you. And now with that disconnect, you're making a business decision because you would go, and we did it at our MSP where we were like, all right, we've got X number of endpoints. We know, like, and we would do counts up through our vendor portals, everything else. We'd say, okay, so this is what we've got. We're going to make this much revenue over the next period. Let's go and drop some money and invest behind this. Yeah, well, we weren't billing for like half of that stuff because it came on me to go and reconcile it. And I was like halfway through and be like, no, I don't think there's any other changes. I'd rather be doing something else right now. And so nobody did anything with it. So we had like bad data on just that side because we weren't reconciling, but that bad data cost us bad decisions and it cost us a ton of money that we weren't invoicing for.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got stuff out there that's like you're getting charged for stuff that isn't in use anymore, but you're also getting charged for stuff that is in use that you're not charging back for.
Yeah.
And so that's places where the data starts to inform everything. Find new and clean automated ways to keep the data clean, keep the data accurate, keep it all in line. And then when you start looking at the data to make the decisions you're already putting on the data, it's actually informed by accurate history and accurate data sitting there.
Yeah, no, we see that all the time. And it's one of those things where that's just process, right? I mean, some of it, getting it right is process. And then we need some automation to check it and make sure that our process is doing what it's supposed to do. Because if we don't iteratively improve that process and fix it as we go along, it'll never get any better.
No, exactly. And you know, if you look at all the iterations that happened, we have this great opportunity to trend over historical stuff, right? It doesn't just have to be of what does the data say about today? What's the state of the union today? But it's how progressively has that state of the union been informed over time, right? So if we look at something and it's like, oh, we get 120 tickets from this customer on average a month. Well, has it been 120 tickets forever? Has it been 120 tickets for the last year every month? Or is it like, wow, in the last 2 months, they've jumped from 40 tickets a month to 120 tickets a month?
Right.
What changed on that environment or with that client that could have imposed that, right? Did we lose a technician that was super, you know, in line with them and taking good care of them? Did we implement a new technology or a new service there? Did they ask for us to? Maybe that's the driver of it. How can we eradicate that? How can we solve for that issue, right? It's you know, a lot of times when people look at data, it's what does it say today? But it's not how did we get to where we're at today
Trend line,
to help
right?
inform those things.
So, you know, obviously your goal is to pull out that data. Our goal is to pull out that data and make it representable to the MSPs. What's the next step for them to go about their evolution to be to become the MSP that is really data driven, right? You said you've worked with some of these MSPs that you feel like really are data driven. What's the difference between them and the MSP that maybe hasn't quite met that maturity level? And what are the steps that they can take to kind of start to move that direction?
So I think a couple things. One is making that investment again to work on the business, not in the business. Well, data can help ease that discomfort in making that decision for you, right? Because a lot of MSPs are like, well, I can't afford to bring on another technician. Well, can't you? You know, I'll bet you if you look at, like, take a weekend and look at your data properly, chances are you can find $4,000 or $5,000 a month to bring on a technician and let them do that so that you can keep going another way.
I mean, $4,000 or $5,000 a month sounds like a lot, but in a small MSP, it's surprising how often, you know, that's just 1 or 2 clients.
It is, and you can find it and you can do it. So many people, same thing on that same topic, look at $50,000 to $60,000 salary and they just focus on that number. Well, no, any job you've ever started has come with a probation period, right? See how it goes. You're only committing to a monthly fee when you're hiring on an employee, if you want to think about it that way, right?
As long as you're in one of those at will states, it doesn't even come with a contract, right?
Unless you did sign a 1-year contract with them, which don't do that.
Right.
Yeah. You're going to find out really quick. It might only take you 2 weeks to realize they're not the right person or you just can't do this. Boom. Then it only costs you half that amount of the first month, right? But overall, I think the MSPs that are focusing on the data and doing it, they're seeing so much more success. But I think the biggest difference is recognizing and admitting to themselves that they don't know what they don't know. Your gut or your hunch isn't as accurate as what historical data could do. And I think what we're trying to work towards is we understand that it's not easy to be data driven. It's not easy for everybody to understand the data or what they can do, what levers they can pull on to influence any of those metrics. So how can we simplify that? Well, the way that we can simplify it by gradient is understanding the performance trends in history and even anomalies and traits, similar traits across a wealth of MSPs together. So as we start getting informed by 1 and 2 and 10 and 200 MSPs on, that starts to help us understand that, hey, the ones that are data driven are feeding some of the stuff. We can come back and circle back to the ones who maybe aren't quite data driven yet and say, here's what we've learned from those who are data driven. Yeah. Here's the decisions that they've made and here's how those have panned out. maybe these same decisions would work for you, and we have good reason to believe it would. And so that's kind of what we're working towards, is this world where if you don't have the data at your fingertips or you don't know how to read it, we can expand on a collective data set to provide you that insight that you need and the answers or the recommendations that you should follow. We can simplify that whole process, but we realize we're only starting here now, and we need to have all that participation and contribution from partners and from MSPs and the community as a whole to help feed that, to push things forward.
Well, it's funny you say that, because with Lifecycle, we really built what I complained about at first, right? You know, I had a problem at my MSP, and I complained to the right person who got me in touch with some great developers, and a company was built. And we really worked very specifically to solve my problems for the first several, I'd say close to 6 months. And then we rolled it out to beta partners, and then we started to get more advice and more decisions. And it sounds like you guys are going down the same road that we did, which honestly turned out to be the best thing we ever did, which was a ton of partner feedback, all the way from mature partners who were 4 and 5 times my size to smaller partners who were a fourth my size, right? And just to get that information and learn how they use the platform, and to get our own data ourselves and act on it. But one of the most important things we did at my MSP was to turn some of these discussions, when you start to use a new tool, when you start to get extra data points and extra insights, was to turn them into part of our L10 meetings every week. You know, we would have a leadership meeting, a traction leadership meeting, and we would make sure that as we got a new data point, we inserted it into that meeting so that it was a discussion point, because it falls into that what gets watched gets done thing. You know, if we have all this data and we don't act on it, and we don't even look at it, it doesn't do us any good. So I think, you know, one of the big things to me is just giving MSPs ways to utilize this data, to sit in front of the data, to look at it. It's why in our platform, the first thing you land on when you log in is the dashboard that tells you what your data quality looks like for that customer you're working on. And it's just one of the things that we found was absolutely necessary in making this conversion and helping people present the real factual kind of lay of the land, or the status quo, as I like to say, to their clients, and even internally, to have these conversations is just getting it in front of them often, and making sure they understand what they're looking at.
Yeah, well, and if you're going to start looking at the data, make sure it's clean, and you can go about that really manually and make that big investment and go down that path, or you can hop into a solution that's going to help automate it and help you identify that information quicker and easier, right? Whether you're starting out your stuff in Lifecycle Insights, or you're looking at some reporting and you don't want to use Lifecycle Insights because your data is not at a point yet, then we're going to do that for free. I know it's crazy. It's
you are crazy, Colin. I'll give you that.
But you come in. And even for now, like we're saying, hey, we'll buy you lunch while you're cleaning up your data. So if you sign up for
Gradient, you'll actually pay them to use it for free?
Yeah, we will. We'll give $20 Uber Eats vouchers, and we'll buy you lunch as you like. We're not buying you like steak and lobster type lunch here, but I'm pretty sure you can get a hella meal from know some other regular chain that's on Uber Eats. And go through it and do some of that, right? And just start cleaning it up and feeding the future for the industry.
No, that's awesome. And I love the go-giver mentality of kind of putting it out there for free and letting folks get started with it. You know, we did a free trial, and I think it's been very well received. And our mentality behind the free trial was, if you do your free trial and spend some time working on your data, you can get through your first 30 days. You should be able to clean up the data at a customer and go out and make a legit presentation to a client and get enough results. You know, you should be able to close a sale with the kind of reports that we give you, that you should be able to pay for the platform before you ever have to start, you know, before your first bill ever comes due. But, you know, that said, you can't give it away for free forever. So what's the bigger plan behind that?
So we will be charging for billing reconciliation stuff.
That's worth paying for.
that I think that I look back, I'm like, I would have paid a mint for that. No, we're not going to charge. We're not going to charge a mint for that.
Probably put a box around that.
but you know, we'll charge for that. I think the bigger thing is it's all towards data intelligence for us, right?
You know what you should charge for?
What's that?
That feeling of getting to hold down shift and delete on that spreadsheet that we all used to use for billing, because that minute right there would be like,
how about never log into another vendor portal again type thing, right?
Yeah.
That
Except
sounds like something
Insights.
I'd pay for. right? Oh, sorry. Yes, that's a solution though. I'm not.
Right,
I
right.
mean,
There
I
you
mean,
go.
like,
There you go.
where's my partner portal so that I can
So I
just
can
see how
reconcile
much
my
I'm using,
numbers.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that type of thing. But so there's that, and then there's the whole, like, we may not be charging for data cleaning, and we may not charge a fortune for billing reconciliation type stuff. It'll help keep some of the lights on, but people are going to be paying with a contribution of their data, and now that's totally scrubbed and anonymized and cleared, so that we can feed a collective intelligence solution back to the MSPs, so we can consume and we can be the aggregator of all this information, and we can be the stewards of that data and collect it and put it together without names to understand what's really happening in the industry, so that we can then charge for the intelligence back to the MSPs to say, here's the next steps you should be taking. Here's where you should be doubling down. Here's how you are performing, not how this X, named thought leader in our industry thinks you should be charging whatever for your products. Here's what people are actually charging. Here's
And what
what's
they're actually
really
being
selling.
successful charging, right?
Here's what's going on, so that you can make that. And I think that there's big value in that, and that's where we'll really make our money. But we can't get to that point to help those businesses and drive that industry forward without the contributions and participation of the MSPs today. So,
well, I just want to say, big data is scary and transparency is important. So I appreciate your transparency on that. I think a lot of the folks in the room will appreciate your transparency on that. It's one of those things where scrubbing it and anonymizing it, big words are hard, is important. But I also think it's how we get the best results, right? The Paul Dipples of this world didn't learn what they know, didn't get to where they're at, and didn't get this industry to where it's at without having a ton of data at their disposal, and without being able to to parse through that data and make something meaningful out of it. So it's super important. And I just think the transparency in front of it's everything.
I would only expect the same if I was dealing with somebody else, right? Like, it's got to get there, and we're taking the steps because we can say so much in transparency. But so we just announced our SOC 2 Type 1. We'll have our SOC 2 Type 2 by the end of the year. We're working on ISO 27001. We're doing all of these things, right? Because for you to trust us to be a steward, we have to earn that trust, right? And that's so funny because I was tagged in a post this morning about how do you earn trust? To me, that's it. Taking actions, right? Being held accountable. It's all of those things. You said big data is scary. To me, bad decisions are scary. So I'd rather battle
maybe
big
bad
data.
Maybe bad data is worse, scarier than big data.
Like, I've made some horrible decisions that have cost a lot of money in my career. If we can eradicate that potential and mitigate that from happening for other MSPs. I mean, we risk not just my own livelihood, the livelihoods of all of our employees at our MSP because of decisions that we were made that were fueled by bad decisions. If the efforts that we're doing can help solve that for one other MSP, or we can make recommendations based off the collective intelligence that takes the industry average from 1 to 3 million in revenue to 3 to 5 million in revenue, we're going to be able to help push this whole industry forward, capture more of that $100-ish billion opportunity that all the research firms are saying is out there for MSPs in the next few years. Right? That's what matters to us.
It's funny because when you say that, the first thing I think is that a $3 million or a $5 million MSP is going to have a much easier job in dealing with the compliance issues that are coming down the road than a $1 million MSP, right? At $1 million, the cost of compliance is a much heavier percentage, is a much harder hit. At 3 to 5 million, there's money there to deal with compliance, and you're dealing with it right now, so it's expensive.
That's not cheap.
It's not cheap
in money or effort, resources.
Right. it costs you time and money, and significant on both sides. So it's a ton of work. So I think that's a great goal to help move the industry, and I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. I love the fact that you're starting with a freemium offering and kind of putting it out there, and working to help folks just straight up like that. So
thanks, man.
So I asked if we had any questions in the chat. I've got some private notes that they've appreciated the conversation around data. I did write, being the math person, I have bad data greater than, in a bad way, big data. So I'm going to think on that. Maybe
that'll be a blog post later this week.
I was going to say, you'll see that again, Colin. I'll tell you. you can wax more philosophical on that, because I appreciated that. So as we wrap up, because I want to be cognizant of time, any final parting shots, if you each had 30 seconds to wrap things up for folks?
I mean, I'll start with that. I think, my final parting shot is pretty simple, which is garbage in, garbage out. It's something my mother said to me as a she was an AS400 programmer when I was in second grade. And I can hear her, I was learning basic programming in second grade. And I remember her saying that to me when I was, designing flowcharts and all this other stuff. And I think that's true today. It's one of the few things about technology that has not changed. It is absolutely a true principle. And so anything MSPs can do to clean up their data and automate the cleaning up of their data is largely valuable. These data sets are becoming more and more the differentiator. As security becomes bigger and more important, knowing what's on your network, what you're supporting, what it costs you to support it, and what kind of a margin you can make at that. Data follows all the way through every step of that, and it follows your customer through their entire customer lifecycle, from prospect to however many years you're going to have that customer as a lifetime value customer. So the data is super important, and it's super important that we get it right.
Yep, I would agree. Quality and quality out should be the mentality.
Right.
I think my final bit here is, I think you read so many books over time from influential people that have accomplished great things. And they all say that the most rewarding thing to them was serving a purpose bigger than themselves. And I think what my plea is out of the direction that Gradient's heading is, you are not the product, you're a participant in a future for the industry here. And we're trying to create and foster an ability for every MSP to serve something greater than themselves when it comes to the industry that you participate in. And by interacting and joining the webinar here and helping spread the word of Gradient, or even participating with us, it helps feed that future for, MSP accountability, vendor accountability, more success, and driving not just you, but all of your brothers and sister peers, MSPs out there forward and to make them more successful. And so that's really what we're about. That's where we're going. And we're excited to welcome anybody along that journey with us here.
I love that you say that, because, somebody asked me why I sold my MSP. And I said, one of the things that I really lost as the MSP grew was that feeling that I actually helped somebody at the end of the day. The more time you spend in the boardroom managing the company and looking at the data and the numbers and actually running a company, the less time you spend helping somebody fix their machine. To me personally, with my personality type, it was less and less rewarding. And the one thing I've gotten back by coming out and working in the channel is the ability to help individual MSPs, and more to have it on that personal level, to actually work with them and help them move something forward just a little bit, whether it's their QBR process or their data quality or their some sort of analytics along the way. And to me, it's been super rewarding. So that really hits home.
So I know Alex's email, Colin. I think I can guess yours. But what should I put in the chat if folks want to contact you and follow up?
Throw my email out there.
Yeah. Colin.knox@meetgradient.com.
Well, and put Colin's cell phone number out there. They all want to call him.
I'm good with that.
Mine's in my email signature, so I can't run away from it.
I did it wrong. I did Colin.no. You know how
Colin.no.
Fingers are
Colin.knows.nothing at
it's funny because I threw an email out in a rant on social media the other day, and somebody immediately went and tried to send an email to it and said, that didn't work. So now you have to go make Colin.knows.nothing into a real email so you can answer them when you're done.
I like it.
Would be a good one.
I took a page of notes. I hope everybody else got some details out of that. That'll help them move forward with bigger and better data instead of badder and worse data.
I stole a topic that I'm going to write on for some point later this week or the next. So there'll be at least one blog coming out of this. Colin's going to make me at least think about something.
Perfect.
That's good. Thought-provoking stuff. Thanks, guys.
I've already burned all the hair over here. So. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon. We appreciate you hanging out.
Cheers.
Take care.